Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Saphira Center of Shamanism, where we break down the ancient esoteric practices of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It is an honor to have you here. Thank you for joining once again. Be sure to check out my membership programs in the first two links of the description of this video. First link if you want my premium membership service, the Saphira Shamanic School, ideal if you're wanting to work closely with me and gain access to potent occult training and initiation webinars multiple times each month. Or check out the second link for my Patreon to gain access to over 300 pieces of exclusive content relating to shamanism and the occult. You will find full initiatory systems through the Sephiroth, the Qliphoth, the Necronomicon Gnosis, the Norse worlds, and many other things, with new content uploaded multiple times each week. Gain access at just £20 per month. I look forward to seeing you there. So today we are going to be discussing the concept of the split universe, discussing the concept that Kenneth Grant brought forward, known as Universe A and Universe B. Now, this is a very broad way of describing the split in reality as we know it, referring specifically to the polarities, light matter and dark matter. What we are referring to here are two universes that are a split mirror of each other. One is a mirror of form and the other is formlessness. Universe A refers specifically to the pre-constructed multiverse of light, matter, and form. We as human beings are dwelling within Universe A, which is the multiverse of pre-constructed form and order. Everything around us is pre-constructed by divine laws that are set into motion in order to hold our multiverse in place. We then have Universe B, which represents formlessness, infinity. No predefined constructs and no predefined laws. Now, this polarity is a map of virtually every opposing force. The light/universe A represents the angels, represents the masculine, represents creation, represents life. And then we have the universe B, which represents the darkness, represents the demonic realms, represents chaos, and represents pure potential. Now, even though there is a divide within the universe as we know it, split by light matter and dark matter, it's important to realize that we as human beings have both within us. Originally, light and dark was not split. We all come from the center point, the axis that sits in between the polarities and contains both simultaneously. This axis is referred to in many different traditions in different ways. We have the axis mundi, and in Gnosticism we have Abraxas, the concept being the supreme archon that transcends all of duality and is the literal archetype of the absolute as we know it. So we as human beings extend from the absolute. Everything comes from the absolute. But in order for the absolute to experience itself, it has to divide itself into two polarities to be able to experience consciousness. Now, Universe B refers to unconsciousness, pure potential. The mirror to the human psyche there would be the unconscious mind. And then Universe A represents the conscious mind and pure awareness, the things that we are aware of, the things that we can smell, taste, touch, and tangibly experience. So if the absolute is everything and nothing at the same time, it cannot simply experience itself without dividing itself into formlessness and form, because from formlessness, from Universe B, entire worlds are cultivated, much like how the unconscious mind/shadow self is responsible for the cultivation of reality as we know it, and the conscious mind is only a small fraction as to what actually contributes to the cultivation of reality. So Universe A, light, matter, and form, is the conscious mind, the awareness to the pure potential. The light brings awareness to the darkness, and the darkness brings infinity to the light. If we bind ourselves to one, we get lost in that polarity. If we bind ourselves to the conscious mind, to reality in a way that we can only perceive here and now, then we get lost within pre-constructed paradigms, thought forms, and traumas. But then if we go into universe B, into dark matter, without actually connecting with the light at all, and we try and flee from light, then we end up getting lost within that infinite space, and then we have no meaning. So they really complement each other. We as human beings, from an evolutionary potential, are supposed to integrate as the axes, be the meeting point between these opposing forces. So this is exactly what we are going to discuss today, diving into the different principles of Universe A, Universe B, exploring the alchemy and metamorphosis that is brought by both polarities, giving some examples of the different individual realms that hold within a given polarity, and ultimately describing what it truly means to embark on the journey of individuation and the journey back to become the axis that sits at the center of the polarities. Absolutely essential topic, so definitely stay tuned. So when we talk about Universe A and Universe B, we are referring to the split in polarity within the universe itself. But we as human beings are meant to be the center point that contains both. Therefore, we are supposed to be the axis that welcomes and integrates both. But our world, as it's constructed, in Universe A, binds itself to pre-constructed rules and regulations and tends to ignore the other polarity. Now, it's very easy to get lost within your own constructs and within your own predefined identity, even if you are exploring dark matter intelligence. For example, occultists can work with demonic spirits and still be bound to their own predefined identity structures that they didn't actually choose through their own autonomy. What it means to actually connect with Universe B is to genuinely embrace yourself as a sovereign, godlike being, and that you yourself are responsible for the cultivation of reality. So anyone can interact with light matter intelligences like the angels, dark matter intelligences like the daemons, but to actually be the axis that sits between them requires an awful lot of work, accountability, and a lot of knowledge on trauma itself, because it's easy to scapegoat one versus the other. Now, we as human beings, as I've mentioned, are born into Universe A, the multiverse of pre-constructed light, matter, and form, at which point everything around us is already predefined, and we learn to emanate qualities, belief systems, and entire identity structures off of things that we have been given through societal level constructs and through our own individual trauma fragmentation. Even spirituality that focuses all on ascension and light only and sees the darkness, which is Universe B, sees the darkness as something that needs to be removed, or, oh, I need to remove this darkness from myself. Oh, there's so much dark energy around. How do we get rid of it? All of this is built from a huge misunderstanding and a huge misinterpretation as to what the universe actually is. A lot of spiritual beliefs, when they talk about ascension and rising back up to the light, they are referring to only one polarity, at which point their evolution is going to be bound to the polarity in which they are attaching to. The majority of spiritual practices work towards avoiding darkness, removing darkness, and basically villainizing aspects of the self, emotions, and various different unmet needs that we have learned are not safe to feel and express by default, these practices are built to gaslight these parts and cast them into the unconscious mind, into universe B, and therefore universe B is then a type of hell structure that holds everything that you are not looking at or owning about yourself, the perceived good and the perceived bad. So the majority of spiritual practices are focused predominantly on universe A and rising up to higher levels of consciousness within universe A. Now, you can describe universe A as being the pre-constructed multiverse. If you look at it in the context of Gnosticism, the concept of the demiurge, who has constructed the matrix as we know it, you can see the demiurge and the pre-constructed matrix as universe A. Therefore, if you focus only on universe A, then you get trapped within the karmic cycles that bind you to universe A itself. Now, the trap with Gnosticism is getting lost in blame. I don't want my viewers to then say, oh, but then we're trapped. We're now trapped in the multiverse and we have to do everything in our power to escape it. No. We have to balance the two polarities because both of them can become a trap if we bind ourselves only to one. The concept of the demiurge and the archons binding you to a pre-constructed matrix and binding your soul to a constant process of harvesting and karmic cycles is a mirror to your own internal state, at which point if you focus only on the positive polarity, then you will just keep cycling within the positive polarity itself. But when you go into the negative polarity, which is in universe B, the primordial chaos, you start tapping into a realm that is not predefined by anything, at which point the forces within universe B have the agenda of returning you to primordial intelligence, which is the aspect of you before conditioning, your true soul's essence before you were conditioned. But if you follow that path and completely reject universe A, which is at the end of the day what you are dwelling within whilst within this physical avatar and within this body, if you reject universe A, then you fall into the traps of the majority of the left-hand path community, most of which are absolutely fucking mental, and fall into delusions and different things where they just end up cycling in their own darkness with no integration or individuation whatsoever. So you can see how if you embody one and then reject the other, ultimately it's going to lead you into a form of over-polarizing, which is going to keep you trapped within a certain cycle. We have to understand that universe A is what gives meaning and structure to universe B, and universe B is what expands the potential beyond anything that is pre-constructed. So we're referring to literally here masculine and feminine. Masculine being universe A, the angelic held multiverse of pre-constructed order, and the demonic universe B, the primordial demonic realms that holds the architecture for what is being manifested into universe A itself. So the real path of evolution is not choosing one or the other. It's very easy to say, oh, the solution is in universe B, so then we do everything in our power to return to universe B, but then we reject the light and universe A, at which point there's no integration. The real challenge is allowing yourself to embody the axes, to be the axes that sits at the center of these polarities. Now, this axis represents the non-dualistic absolute, the absolute which is God, all thing and no thing at the same time. This axis is literally what is in between the two polarities. You can describe this axis in one of two ways. Either you see it as like the center of a compass, and then light and dark is extending from either side continuously in order to define meaning for itself, or you can perceive the absolute as higher up and then consciousness gradually separating itself into the two polarities in order to experience itself. It doesn't really matter how you see it, both of which are very good ways of viewing the concept of the absolute and how it cultivates the opposing forces. Now, why is it necessary for the absolute to cultivate opposition? Because it needs to experience itself. The absolute is nothing, all thing and no thing at the same time. How it appears to me when I tune into a being which is said to be an avatar of the absolute itself, then I get a silver void-like energy. And the energy of the absolute itself is immensely dissolving because it rips apart the firewalls that separates the two polarities. But because the absolute is all thing and no thing at the same time, it means that it cannot perceive itself. So in order to perceive itself, it has to generate consciousness. But in order to generate consciousness, it has to first generate potential, unconsciousness. So what happens with the absolute is that it extends into dark matter and light matter, which cultivates two types of void consciousness. The positively charged void being what you could call the trans-Sephirotic realms, and the negatively charged void being the trans-Clithothic realms. From that forms veils of negative existence that combine and then cultivate creation and anti-creation in itself. So the absolute has to split itself into two opposing forces in order to experience consciousness and unconsciousness. It's from unconsciousness that consciousness is born. There can be no light without there being dark first, at which point the darkness is often said to have come first. From the absolute, dark matter is cultivated, pure potential universe B, where entire universes and entire multiverses or matrix, however you want to refer to them, are cultivated from within the depths of dark matter, from within the depths of pure potential. At which point consciousness is then experienced, and then the absolute is playing out its role, which is to cultivate an experience, to cultivate creation and destruction. So if we use the axes as the example again, we have the absolute in the middle. We have light that extends one way, we have dark that extends the other way. And that continuous flow of energy is taking place from both sides. As those two polarities split from both sides, they then descend into literal mirrors of each other. This means that the dark matter is a literal echo of the light matter realms. The best way to describe this would be if you've ever seen Stranger Things and then you've got the concept of the upside down. It's exactly the same concept, okay, in the sense that there is universe B, which is holding the architecture for universe A. But when we return to the absolute, we are making the commitment to embody both. We are bringing light into darkness and darkness into light. We are embracing that continuous flow of order and chaos, being the center point, the absolute, the non-dualistic absolute. Everything is then spiraling between the two polarities. We have creation and universe A on one side, and then destruction and universe B on the other side. So everything in the cosmos is then moving in that cycle. Everything is going through those different cycles on the macrocosm and the microcosm, the spiral path of Abraxas. Now, Abraxas being the Gnostic supreme archon, who is said to possess the head of a rooster, the body, or should I say the torso, of a human being, and snakes as legs. The rooster as the head, symbolizing the order and form, and then the serpent as legs, representing fertility, knowledge, and the underworld. We then have the torso in the middle, which represents the axes, which is symbolic of the fact that human beings are the literal axes that unifies the polarities together. So Abraxas is said to walk that spiral path. that spiral path that moves between darkness and light as and when it needs to. Everything is moving in that spiral path. Nature is moving in that spiral path. Everything is decaying outside at this moment in time, resonant with death energy and dark matter. But then everything will bloom again in the summer. There's a reason why the majority of people love the summer and hate the winter, because the majority of people like that sort of light matter energy, that sort of order, clarity. Everything's brighter, we can see, it's warmer, we can go outwards. But then in the winter period, we all go inwards. Everyone kind of goes into that their own way, a kind of hibernation whereby they embody the opposite polarity. So there are numerous beings that represent the absolute in its totality. We have Abraxas as the primary archetype of the absolute itself. There are other deities within different pantheons and styles of occult practice that represent the same as Abraxas in my view. For example, in Enochian magic, there is the concept of Ida. Ida being the very essence of the absolute itself, in which everything extends from. So there are many different ways that you can refer to that absolute consciousness. If we look at it in the context of Abraxas, we have the absolute, the place of Abraxas, the concept being of unity, unification of opposites. And then as consciousness descends through, there is then a threshold. And in Gnosticism, this threshold would be referred to as the pleroma. The pleroma being home to the eons or the aeons, however you want to refer to it, as being the primordial forces of creation itself. But what this really means in the context of separation of the polarities is that the pleroma would represent that threshold in which the unified essence of the absolute descends through and then expresses itself in the form of the eons, and then the eons emanate that consciousness down and then cultivate density the further down it goes. So there are many different ways that you can really refer to this. To really ensure that you are understanding what universe A and universe B means, understanding that these are literally two currents of energy, two polarities that are extending from the absolute, which we, if we want to genuinely individuate and integrate and use these energies to actually fuel our sustainable evolution, we have to make the commitment to return to the absolute and be the axis that integrates the opposing forces together, welcoming all as a part of self. So to accurately describe how universe A and universe B would appear, let me show a picture here. Now, I've shown this in a previous video about the Sephiroth and the Qliphoth. This is how our multiverse would appear if you look at it with dark matter next to light matter. So in the center, you can see we're using the sphere of the sun as the example here. In the center, the light center, that would represent the multiverse that we are living within. Okay, that is universe A. The center is universe A. We then have universe B, which is the primordial outer layer. Okay, what is actually encasing the multiverse itself. So you can see right here that universe A is only a small fraction of what actually cultivates reality itself, whereas universe B can hold infinite numbers of universe A within it because it has no structure and it has no form. Now, a good way to describe this is also with the conscious and unconscious mind. The center represents the conscious mind, universe A, pure awareness, what we are aware of here and now. So what I am able to perceive here and now is represented by my conscious mind and the center of this diagram, but it is only part of the story. You can see that the sort of red outer layer that is in between the darkness and the light in this diagram can very easily represent, in psychological terms, the subconscious mind, or the formative plane in which possibility descends into in order to take form within the conscious mind. But universe B, which is the dark outer layer, referring to the primordial chaos, this is where entire realities are birthed from. So this would be the same if we describe it in the context of esotericism. If we look at Kabbalah, for example, we have the tree of life and the tree of death. The tree of life being the Sephiroth being the map of the predefined multiverse. The Sephiroth would be the middle. And then the Qliphoth, the dark matter realms of primordial chaos, would represent the dark outer layer of this diagram. So if you were to only do the Sephiroth, you are only going to evolve within that small region there, which is valid. It will change your life, it will help you evolve, but only within the constraints of the pre-constructed multiverse. Then you only do the Qliphoth, you will break out of the constraints of the multiverse, yes, but if you neglect Universe A and you neglect the Sephiroth, which is needed to help you ground and integrate the dark matter energy, then you risk getting lost in your own unconscious mind, and you risk getting lost within that infinite space whereby your ego knows nothing else but to construct delusions from that space instead of what's in harmony with your genuine truth and authenticity. So if we align the two trees together, the tree of life and the tree of death, if we bring them all into one place, or bring them both into one place, and we literally stand them up against each other, then this is how the spheres would appear. And this sphere is the sphere of the sun as the example, which is Tifereth within the tree of life and Thagirion within the tree of death. So the middle would be Tifereth. So you initiate through Tifereth, you're initiating through the middle, the light matter aspect. But then you initiate through Thagirion, you're initiating into the dark matter region beyond it. Okay, so you can very easily see how they are literally one. They're literally up against each other, but you need to embrace both. Okay, we need to embrace light matter. We need to embrace light practices, things that help us to anchor pure awareness and integrate and bring order to the chaos. We need to embrace all of that. But the issue then comes when we neglect the darkness, which, if we do so, we get stuck in reality as it is. We then end up embodying the state of being that most of the spiritual community embody, which is, oh, if I can just maintain this sort of field of light because I am only light. There is no illusion, no greater illusion than when somebody says, we are only light, it's only light. Okay? If you're only light, then you are only that circle in the middle there. Okay? If you are only dark, then you are nothing. Okay? So in a way, embracing both, we are becoming the absolute itself. We are becoming creation and destruction. We are becoming life and death. We are becoming masculine and feminine in one unified avatar. Okay. So what does it mean to connect to Universe B? Connecting to Universe B means committing to your path of continuous energetic death, interacting with intelligences that are going to initiate your energetic death, undergoing initiatory processes that are going to initiate your energetic death, deconstructing everything that you thought you knew about yourself in order to return you to that state within Universe B, which is, again, a continuous process. What does it mean to connect with Universe A? It means actually living your life within the multiverse, understanding that evolution comes from living your life in the multiverse, undergoing the initiatory trials that are required for you to go through every minute of every day, one way or another, and then ultimately learning how to reconstruct and transfigure instead of dissolve. So what we're looking at here is Universe A rebuilds structure and form, Universe B dissolves. Angelic and demonic, creation and destruction, masculine and feminine. Now, within these realms, I understand that Universe A and Universe B, yes, that concept has its limitations because what it implies is that there's only two realms. No, not quite. We are looking at the universe here as basically separated into two polarities, but what is held within both of these polarities are various densities. Okay, so the dimensions that we talk about, the 12 dimensions, or however you want to refer to it, is going to be present within both polarities. Okay, so you have what you could call, I don't like referring to it as like, oh, 3D, 4D, 5D, because we're all connected to all of the realms anyway. But if, for example, we look at the physical plane, then we also have the dark aspect of the physical plane within the dark matter. Okay, so for example, in Kabbalistic terms, it would be Malkuth in the Tree of Life, and then it would be Nehemoth, the Black Earth, within the Tree of Death. So understand that there are varying densities within both polarities. And within these densities are basically going to be home to different civilizations that fall into either one polarity or the other. But there are some beings and some civilizations that are going to fall into both. An example of that would be, say, Azazel, the actual angel Samael, and so on and so forth. There are certain beings that have varying forms that are kind of split between angels and demons itself. Angels and demons are only one way of describing it. There are certain beings that can be described as demonic that are really only dark matter intelligences. So really you can describe demonic spirits as being anything that is dark matter in nature, and something which is angelic in nature would be anything that is light matter in nature. Okay, so the light matter civilizations, for example, would be, say, the Pleiadians. Okay, Pleiadians, the Anunnaki, gods of order and form, what you see within a lot of New Age spirituality, the extraterrestrial beings that dwell within these varying densities, the Greys, Sasani, Esasani, Mazani, all of these different beings that dwell within the light matter itself. But then you have the beings that exist outside of the pre-constructed multiverse, still split by similar vibrational densities, but these beings tend to vary. So, for example, one of the lowest beings within the dark matter slash universe B side would be, say, undead. So, like undead gods. Yeah, that would be an example. You would then have beings that are kind of split between. Then you might have like succubic entities. And there are all kinds of sort of hordes of dark matter intelligences that would dwell within the dark matter itself that have unique evolutionary functions within like the practitioner's experience and alchemical journey. So as a practitioner, if we're, say, interacting with a light matter being, then there's going to be a certain aspect of that being which is basically going to represent something within us. So we are going to be literally interacting with an intelligence that is a mirror of something within us that demands some form of clarity, order, and form. The same if we interact with an angelic entity, literally interacting with different aspects of our conscious mind. We then interact with the dark matter intelligences, and this is where it gets really interesting because we start to communicate with archetypes of what we have been denying. Okay, archetypes that are made up of what we've been denying. So when we communicate with beings that fall into the universe B side, into dark matter, then we are interacting with aspects of ourselves that have been completely rejected. Now, this does not deny the fact that these beings are their own intelligences, and many of them can see everything and are far beyond what we are able to perceive within this physical body. But they also mirror internal archetypes as well. Internal archetypes that have not been looked at and not been owned. So it's important to understand that within both Universe A and Universe B, there are numerous worlds, there are numerous intelligences, and there are numerous vibrational densities that are within both. This is why it's a complete illusion when people describe angels as being higher dimensional beings and then daemons as being lower dimensional beings. It doesn't that's not actually how it works at all. They exist completely mirrored to each other. Okay, completely mirrored to each other. An example would be to look at the 72 angels of the Shem Hamathrash and then basically stand them up against the 72 daemons of the Goetia. They literally mirror each other exactly. Mirror each other exactly, representing the literal opposing forces, qualities in which brings them perfectly into balance. So understand that angels and daemons exist parallel to each other. They are within the same vibrational density, but within different polarities. The angels are within universe A, the pre-constructed light matter multiverse, and the daemons are within universe B, the realm of primordial chaos and dark matter. So understand that the real path of individuation is returning to the axes, merging with Yida or merging with Abraxas, and returning to the axes that sits at the center of the opposing forces, as this is what God really is. Absolutely fascinating subject and important to understand if you are wanting to get into different types of esoteric practices or if you are already into them. Very important to understand the function of the different polarities and how we are taught to bind ourselves to order and form and then reject the opposing force, when in reality, what we are avoiding is what is cultivating reality. So in order to really cultivate reality, we have to go into universe B. It's as simple as that. In order to actually evolve, we have to be in universe A, live within universe A and not reject universe A, but we also have to unearth what is within universe B in order to gain access to the potential that is within it, and in order to actually set ourselves free and embody our sovereignty. So the question simply goes, where are you avoiding what you know is going to have your evolutionary best interest? What you are avoiding, what you don't want to look at, is what is stored within universe B, but when you look at it, you are tapping into the potential, the unmet needs, and learning how to meet the need that is beneath it. You are tapping into the raw aspect of sovereignty and divinity that has been left outside of the pre-constructed multiverse. If you do that from within universe A, within the multiverse, then you are embodying that axis. Absolutely essential to understand, but I think that is everything that I needed to discuss on this fascinating topic. Be sure to check out my membership programs. Patreon is getting bigger and bigger. Numerous different posts are being uploaded this week. I'm focusing on the Norse worlds for this week, full path working through the Norse worlds. You will also find in-depth knowledge and initiatory systems on both the Sephiroth Universe A and the Qliphoth Universe B. Gain access at just £20 per month. But for now, thank you guys. Hit like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.